Hi, my name is Tom, and today we're going to talk about Beast Games, which coincidentally is also the name of the game I play with my subscribers when I chase them through the woods naked on all fours. Fetch me their soul! The status of the MrBeast brand really speaks for itself at this point. It's a universal fact that he is a titan of the YouTube industry and has truly transcended the label of just being a YouTuber into really becoming kind of a worldwide phenomenon in a way that almost no one's done on YouTube. For some younger viewers, and even for me, who has been around since he started doing YouTube and was watching YouTube a lot before that, it's kind of hard to remember what it was like to be on this website before MrBeast. And for a lot of people, all that they know about YouTube is MrBeast. They almost see it as like YouTube is a TV channel and there's MrBeast and then a bunch of children's content and gay. In a way, MrBeast is like the final form in a line of YouTuber eugenics. And I think there's no better way to illustrate this than with the history of YouTuber TV shows. YouTube stars of old like Fred or the annoying Orange would often get their own YouTube shows, and they were not the greatest to say the least. I mean, personally, I do like seeing Fred get suplexed by John Cena, but for the average movie watcher, this is not their cup of tea. And this quality was really a symptom of the type of content that the largest YouTubers at the time were making. Because back then, not every video was like 3 hours long, not every video had a massive budget. Instead, at the time, it was like some kid in his bedroom making a video. They were all homemade. So when those channels blew up and Hollywood smelled money, it was very hard to transform their content into a full-on TV show, or in the case of Fred, 3 movies. On top of that, at the time, YouTubers were pretty uncensored compared to mainstream TV, so it became increasingly hard for network executives to want to greenlight anything when a YouTuber was involved. I like to make my eyes all Japanesey. With PewDiePie probably being the best example. In my opinion, Felix did get his show unfairly canceled, but Hollywood doesn't really care if it's fair or real or not. They care about public backlash and risk, and with PewDiePie, they really learned their lesson. But then in comes MrBeast, and the whole game has really changed. Rising up from the eugenics pod after all of the failed abortion YouTubers, and his rise was crazy. It was meteoric, to say the least. In under 10 years, he went from being unknown, nobody knew who he was, to amassing 300 million subscribers. He launched a burger chain, he created a chocolate brand, and whatever you think about those endeavors, you can't deny that he did do them and they were successful to an extent. They did make a lot of money. They're very popular. Feastables is still on the shelves to this day. The burgers, not so much.
Wow. If you don't say that tastes amazing, you're an idiot.
And then, following the success of all of that, he finally managed to rival TV show productions. For example, he recreated Squid Game with a budget of $3.5 million for one single YouTube video, which at the time I think was probably the highest budget for any YouTube video ever. And that video then got 650 million views, which far surpasses the viewership of any TV show in recent years. And the format of these reality TV show style challenge videos really gave way to the opportunity of adaptation for turning it into an entire series, because his content was already operating in that realm. It's basically a TV show. If any YouTuber was perfect to have a TV show, it would have to be MrBeast. For traditional mainstream network, legacy media, whatever you want to call it, he represented a great opportunity. And on March 18th, 2024, Jimmy announced that he had secured a $100 million deal with Amazon Studios, funding that he secured in the hopes that he would be able to produce a reality TV television series titled Beast Games for Amazon Prime Video. And that $100 million really represented an unprecedented milestone for a YouTuber, reinforcing the idea that digital content creators are just as legitimate, if not more legitimate, than those who are coming out of traditional media. And for the show, he had big plans. This new project was touted as the most ambitious game show ever. In the trailer itself, Jimmy says that the prize pool of $5 million is unprecedented, and according to everything I can read, it is, and it does look pretty insane.
I am standing on $5 million, the grand prize of the most insane competition show you've ever seen. And competing for it are these 1,000 contestants. Are you all ready? Start the timer.
In an interview conducted by Business Insider, the head of Amazon's MGM Studios expressed her excitement at what Jimmy had to offer. "We really need a hit," one Amazon insider said, so they just let him do whatever, meaning he had full creative control. Everything looked like it was going great, and this was going to be an easy slam dunk Beast style, but then the problems started cropping up. 2024 has been an absolutely insane year for controversies, so it may be hard to remember that Beast Games was actually announced before Jimmy Beast got wrapped up in all of the controversies of the past few months. When the show was first announced, people seemed very, very hyped about it. They were generally supportive, but it didn't take long for that sentiment to start changing. In July, Dogpack 404, or Dawson French, would release his first in a series of videos exposing MrBeast. The details of these videos aren't that important for this video, and there were a lot of claims made in these videos, the majority of which have since been largely disproven, but the details don't actually matter for today's story. So if you somehow have managed to avoid this entire situation with the MrBeast controversies and you're watching this video, all you really need to know is that these videos got a ton of views, and they painted Jimmy in a very, very bad light. What they did do a very good job of was shifting the public perspective for a lot of people who are very into the YouTube culture to not being in favor of Jimmy Beast. Before these videos dropped, Jimmy was seen as the golden boy of YouTube that could do no wrong. He couldn't even be criticized. So when Dogpack made this video, it kind of started a domino effect of people coming out and adding more allegations. Now that the general public realized that, oh, MrBeast is a real person. He can be criticized. He's not an infallible golden boy. But at the same time as this controversy was flaring up and these videos were coming out, Beast Games was currently being filmed. MrBeast and his company and Amazon, whoever it is, had rented out a massive stadium for his show, and over 2,000 people were going to be contestants in the very first episode. It was one of the biggest productions that had ever been done in the history of anything literally ever. But while they were filming, something weird started happening. We started getting some weird reports, some weird posts. A bunch of tweets started appearing of the contestants showing them wearing trash bags, and rumors started floating around from tabloids that the conditions were maybe less than ideal. In a concerning twist to the story, a source claims Desert Springs Hospital has seen countless patients today coming from Beast Games due to a lack of food and water. We have reached out to MrBeast and his publicist about the situation, but no further information is available at this time. And with all these claims coming out, it wouldn't be long before a more mainstream source decided to take notice, and that source ended up being the New York Times. They published a scathing article titled "Willing to Die for MrBeast and $5 million." The contestants in the internet star's Beast Games expected outlandish challenges and signed contracts that acknowledged risks of serious injury and death. Still, few were prepared for the conditions on set. This article was a big bombshell to add on top of the recently released Dogpack video, and they did not hold back. In the article, the New York Times basically describes the production of this show as a war zone. Some contestants left the competition arena on stretchers, a contestant said, though it was unclear if any of those contestants had faced serious medical conditions. Another described watching fellow contestants vomiting and appearing to pass out. There were several hospitalizations. Several contestants also said that they had not been warned about how little they would be given to eat and how infrequently. They described going long stretches without being fed by the production. One said she had gone over 20 hours, both during the games and while they were in Las Vegas before and after filming. One meal, described by several contestants, included a tiny portion of cold oatmeal, one hard-boiled egg, and a few pieces of raw vegetables. This video is sponsored by GamerSupps, the best energy drink that money can buy. It tastes great, it's got a lot of fun and cool and zany and awesome flavors. I personally have been drinking a lot of Crusaderade lately. This is Swagger Souls' flavor. And I've also been drinking this one called Kissy Kissy Passion, which, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like what's on it, but it does taste good, so I drink it. It's also a lot cheaper, a lot more affordable than other energy drinks, and YouTubers are selling it, so what could possibly go wrong? So go to gamersupps.gg/Tom to get 10% off your order today, and a special thanks to GamerSupps for sponsoring my videos where I talk about weird shit and act embarrassing. All right, now back to the video. Obviously, when you're competing for $5 million, you shouldn't expect a 5-star meal, but it is understandably concerning if some of these people literally just weren't eating anything, or in some people's cases, they had dietary restrictions that weren't being followed. Some of these guys could have touched a peanut once and turned into Chris Tyson.
I used to get pegged a couple of times when I was a kid. You what?
But this problem with the food was really the least of the alleged problems, as a few contestants needed medications that they allege were not given to them. Several contestants said they had not received their medication on time, including one contestant who needed insulin, instead receiving it hours or even days after their scheduled dosing times. This got so bad that allegedly 2 contestants had seizures from this apparent lack of care. There were also some other women that alleged they were menstruating, the menstruating allegations, and their claim is basically, you know, they're going through this time of the month, and they were denied clean underwear and feminine hygiene products by production because, in their words, it was not an emergency. Others claimed that they were severely injured and were not compensated well enough. Overall, this didn't look very good for our boy Beast. And it would even get worse a few months later in September when a class action lawsuit was filed from 5 anonymous contestants. This lawsuit made even more allegations that were even more serious than the ones from the New York Times article. The complaint alleged that the Beast Games contestants experienced widespread mistreatment, sexual harassment, and unpaid expenses and wages, including not being paid at all and not being paid for overtime. time. The complaint alleged 13 causes of action: failure to pay minimum wage, failure to pay overtime wages, sexual harassment, negligent infliction of emotional distress, failure to prevent harassment, failure to provide uninterrupted meal breaks, unfair business practices. Now, keep in mind this lawsuit is ongoing and everything here is alleged, so we have no idea how true all of it is. It technically could be made up. And exactly how much of it is true and how much of it is fake is something we won't even know for a while, because the legal process takes quite a bit of time. Jimmy and his team would be relatively quiet about the lawsuit, though, obviously, and only make small comments here and there, at least until the end of November, when Jimmy would get interviewed by Oompaville to address all of his controversies at the tail end of everything. Now, he does make it clear that he apparently can't say too much about the lawsuit specifically because it's still ongoing, but what he can say is that the CrowdStrike incident heavily contributed to this happening. For those who don't know, basically CrowdStrike is this massive cybersecurity firm that controls software everywhere, and they sent out an update that basically crashed every vital software system throughout the country. So stuff like airports just had to be shut down and delayed while they fixed it because this one company slipped on a banana peel.
That created a lot of confusion, and that caused a lot of problems in our systems, and that was pretty brutal. And they're like, so I'm not trying to just like disavow everything, like, you know what I mean?
In regards to the idea of some people being unpaid, Jimmy simply states that they told everyone before they came that there was no guaranteed money, but he did say he wanted to surprise everyone anyway and guaranteed them all $2,000 even if they walked away from the competition.
This is the damned if you do, damned if you don't. So we told everyone, no guaranteed money if you show up. I'm glad you asked this. No guaranteed money if you show up. Like, you could walk away with $0. But then I wanted to surprise everyone. Gave them each $2,000, $4 million, which it's a lot of money. I could have gone and just bought a mansion instead of doing that. But what's even crazier is then people tried to, not like the contestants, but the internet, and, you know, their theories, tried to frame that as hush money. Like I gave them all $2,000 to like make them happy because we didn't tell them beforehand, like to surprise them as they got eliminated. And then people are like, you just did that because of hush money. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, I also didn't give them like legal paperwork tied with it. Like that says it was just like completely baseless. It just shows like how crazy people go with the conspiracy theories and everything like that.
Overall, this section of the interview from Oompaville is pretty underwhelming, but obviously that's not anyone's fault. It's really because there's an ongoing lawsuit here, so it's impossible to address the more serious claims until there's any conclusion. MrBeast would follow this up, though, with a small statement on Twitter where he said, "We have tons of behind the scenes dropping when the show does to show how blown out of proportion these claims were. Just can't release it now because it would spoil the games." After this interview, any talk of the Beast Games controversy largely went silent and under the radar, as people pretty much were just waiting for the show to drop. And on December 19th, 2024, the first episode would release simultaneously on YouTube and on Amazon Prime Video. Now, the very same day that this show dropped, it blew up like almost immediately right out of the gate, and it seems like an immediate hit, at least according to MrBeast. Literally 24 hours after it came out, it hit #1 on Amazon Prime in the US, and then a day later, it reached #1 in literally half the countries in the world. Some people on Twitter would respond to these stats and claim that Amazon doesn't publicly release their stats, but I think with the lawsuit that Jimmy's already swept up in, I assume he doesn't want to lie about this, and also he is working with Amazon, so to give him the benefit of the doubt here, he probably wouldn't know if it's #1 or not. But despite the minor complaints, it looks like this grand YouTube eugenics program had finally paid off, and MrBeast would be the first mainstream TV show by a YouTuber that wasn't actually a total flop. It only took a decade, but we finally did it, folks. We did YouTube on TV. They even got commercials at an NFL game.
From YouTube megastar MrBeast comes the most insane competition series ever made. 1,000 players will battle for a $5 million prize. Don't miss Beast Games, new episode weekly only on Prime Video. And there is MrBeast himself, Jimmy Donaldson from North Carolina, gearing up for the 2-episode premiere.
But of course, raw numbers and hits aren't everything. Eventually, the critics would weigh in, and weigh in they did. IGN gave this show a 2 out of 10, saying it's largely dull and without much of anything to get invested in, relying on constantly shouting at us about the stakes while frenetic editing slices everything to pieces. It's about what you'd expect from an ever-hustling spectacle merchant like MrBeast, but that only makes it all the more exhausting to take in. The Guardian, meanwhile, said it exists solely to show us the worst of the human condition as obnoxiously as possible. In other words, it probably wasn't worth getting sued for. Meanwhile, Colin and Samir, which is a channel that's interviewed and documented the behind the scenes on MrBeast for a while now, released a video just a few days ago to coincide with the release of the TV show, showing the utter chaos that was the behind the scenes. The amount of money, the coordination and manpower that went into making this show is almost impossible for me personally to comprehend. This entire behind the scenes this thing shows a ton of people working on this show. I mean, it's like rooms of fucking people. You got writers, production designers, you've got architects building the sets. They've got literally everything. There's these like narrative guys, these narrative MFs, as the kids say, and they have a separate monitor for each of the 2,000 contestants. And they have this insane setup to indicate if one of the contestants would be good in the grand story they're trying to tell, to like focus on.
And then we've mapped out like where they are on our quadrant. So green is like something unique about them.
Reds are alphas.
I really love that they tag people with who is like the alpha. I just think that's so cool. That's the alpha, but this guy's the beta. Susie over here, 9 years old, beta, but James Dongi, alpha. They are scientifically categorizing who objectively is the Sigma male. And this mini doc also paints a more sympathetic light for Jimmy in regards to how massive of a feat this was to pull off. I mean, nothing like this has been done in the history of entertainment at this scale, so even without all of the road bumps along the way, as far as the production stuff seemingly that went on, allegedly according to various sources, this would have been a ludicrously hard thing to get perfect, so there's a lot going into it. Now, there are a lot of other articles that make it seem like the production was totally lazy or they weren't doing their best because they wanted to cut costs and save money, and that's why there were all these issues. But this video's perspective is kind of the opposite. I will say the one thing I am walking away from this with is the fact that anyone who's saying that Jimmy Beast didn't put a massive amount of effort into ensuring this went well is completely delusional, because there's so much going on here.
So the power has gone out in the hangars due to the storm. Production has been stopped for safety. Storm is causing some problems. Definitely causing some problems.
There's even this one part when Jimmy is like sitting in a chair lamenting about how he feels like the entire world hates him and thinks that he's evil.
I gotta figure out what we're doing. So many people just think, I don't know.
Do you think I'm evil?
No, I don't think you're evil. I think you're different. But I don't think you're evil. You're one of the more unique humans I've ever met. But I don't think you're evil.
I got one person.
One really interesting part is actually when he sits down with some of the contestants for like a Q&A type thing and to ask if they had any concerns about any of it, and he addressed the controversy again when he was asked about it.
I have a question. It might be controversial, but are you okay with all the articles and stuff that was coming out? She was lying. But I was just asking, like, are you okay?
Well, obviously there was a lot of things not true. Like they're saying there's broken bones. They're saying we're paying people hush money.
We agree. We did.
I mean, what did you think about the articles?
I mean, I thought it was, first off, we're not gonna say nothing, no way. And two, I just thought it was really ridiculous.
It was disappointing for sure, because we knew that wasn't the case.
Right. Yeah.
The perspective, the narrative from this video by Colin and Samir is very much, at least from the people they filmed, that the controversy around the games was completely overblown, that there weren't broken bones, that there weren't all these medical issues, and that basically things mostly went well. And with 2,000 people there, it's certainly believable that some of them could be lying, but it's also believable that a few of them at least could be telling the truth about what happened there. I think that whether or not you want to blame MrBeast or you want to blame the contestants, or if you even give a f, right, I think that you can't deny that there definitely, with 2,000 people in one place, is going to be a myriad of issues. There's going to be a lot of problems. Now, other famous MrBeast non-enjoyers would also react to the Beast Game success in a very negative way. Rosanna Pansino, for example, would tweet out, "The pick-me-girl energy from Jimmy here is insane. The original is better than the uninspired knockoffs." Keep in mind, this is the same person who made a video literally slandering him, thinking that Jimmy was involved with CP somehow, and then she put what she thought was CP in her YouTube thumbnail. Like, I don't even think that you need to be a MrBeast glazer to realize that this woman is like, just a little obsessed, just a little bit obsessed. Now, the Rolling Stone also made an article recently talking about the behind the scenes of Beast Games, and they said that the crew members spoke with them about the conditions of them working there, and according to them, 7 people who worked on the show told Rolling Stone that production was wild and disorganized. During a record rainstorm in August, one production assistant said workers were told to keep working with piles of electrical equipment literally submerged under the water. Another 2 crew members told Rolling Stone that during a 90-degree heat wave, the warehouse they were working in turned off air conditioning and fans during certain challenges because they didn't want to interfere with the atmosphere of filming, and the conditions were not ideal. Crew members also suffered injuries on set, according to multiple crew members who spoke with Rolling Stone, who had heard about the incident from those present, including one who was on set when it happened on September 11th. A 6x6 foot piece of the exterior of the tower fell on a crew member while the set was being packed away. The crew member was injured and rushed rushed off to the hospital. He was on the ground until the ambulance showed up. One PA says it just nailed the dude, and he was just walking by underneath and not under a part of the tower that they were actively working on at that time. Now, several of the actual contestants have also come out and made YouTube videos of their own talking about their experiences. One contestant talked about how they gave the crew 3 pairs of fresh underwear that they were able to change into whenever they wanted, but because there were so many of them, it got messy and hard to do so everyone ended up smelling apparently and having shit flaked underwear, or as I call it, beast flakes.
And then there was the clean underwear situation. Also, just like the medication, everybody was supposed to put, I think, 3 to 5 of their undergarments inside of a plastic bag with your name on it, and when you wanted fresh underwear, they would give you fresh underwear if you went to the desk and you checked in with them. But when you have 2,000 people, or at this point 1,600 people, it's still very hectic, and that's a lot of people to manage. So throughout our time there at Allegiant Stadium, we did not shower. They gave us some deodorant wipes and toothbrushes. So yeah, by the time you leave Allegiant Stadium, you stink. You stink so bad by the time you leave that stadium that you don't even realize that you stink, because everybody around you stinks. Thus, your nose is just used to that crappy, musky smell.
Other contestants also talked about the food, and they described it as mostly edible.
And let me tell you, this food was mostly edible. The entire time that we were locked in that stadium, they only gave us 2 different meals. One of them was boiled chicken, undercooked quinoa, and a tiny amount of steamed vegetables, all put together in this like microwavable TV style dinner thing. And then the other meal was half a cup of cold oatmeal, a cold hard-boiled egg, and then a tiny amount of vegetables that was also cold. And we never knew which one we were gonna get. Sometimes it was the boiled chicken one, and sometimes it was the cold oatmeal one.
Overall, though, while still having a few negatives, most of the contestants that I've seen made videos saying that their experiences overall were a pretty positive thing, even if it was obviously a tough time. In the comment section of one video, one commenter said, "I've seen a bunch of videos where the contestant complained about the food, but they were flown in for free and had to attend to 2,000 people, so you get $2,000 if you decide to leave, and honestly, for $5 million, I still think it's worth it." And this contestant said it was worth it. The food was crappy and the show was intense, but I had a ton of fun, made new friends, and the crew was great. I'm not complaining, I'm just sharing the intensity of my experience and trying to add a little lighthearted humor. I would go back in a heartbeat. At the end of the day, it's gonna be a little while before we find out if any of this stuff on set even actually happened, because we have not seen direct proof of it. Obviously, we've heard a lot of reports, and with so many reports, I'm somewhat inclined to think that some of it is probably true, but whether or not it's MrBeast's fault, whether or not it's the production staff's fault, whether or not it's Amazon's fault, it's hard for me to say. If I had to guess, some of these issues, if they did happen, are probably a convergence of all these different factors. It's partially the fact that there were 2,000 people. It's probably partially the fact that they were somewhat understaffed. It's probably partially the fact that it was just a giant scale of a thing to even do in the first place. And it's probably also partially the fact that someone along the line f***ed up. And as far as who you want to place that responsibility onto, it's ultimately up to you. After watching the first episode, the show is really just a MrBeast video with a lot more money. It's not like, you know, super impressive narratively driven. It's not super impressive from like an acting or, I don't know, drama perspective. It's really just like a MrBeast video that they put on Amazon Prime, and they gave him $100 million to do it so he can do anything he wants. That's really what it is. And it is impressive, and it is cool, but I do have a feeling that I think that this show overall, when a lot of people outside of YouTube who don't know a lot about it see this show, they might have a slightly negative impression of YouTubers from it, not really because of the allegations that have been made about MrBeast, but instead just because it's like, you know, it's quote-unquote slop, right? It's like the highest budget slop you can possibly do. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but that is kind of what it is. You know, it's popcorn, and there's a reason why it sells. There's a reason why it's so successful. There's a reason why MrBeast is the most popular YouTuber in the world, because this is what the average person wants to see. So, you know, while I take my high IQ and dedicate it to watching Rick and Morty or maybe Bob's Burgers or, I don't know, something else that's gay, a lot of people are going to watch this show, and ultimately, they're not really going to care about the controversy. I've seen a lot of YouTube thumbnails like, MrBeast's show is a disaster, MrBeast's show is over, everybody hates it, but ultimately, the reviews of critics in regards to YouTube stuff don't really matter. I don't think it's going to matter in the long term. The show clearly has been successful. It will probably continue to be successful, and you know what? At this point, I think MrBeast might be a little too big to fail. Whether you love him, whether you hate him, he is getting it done. Hopefully along the way, everyone gets their insulin injections though. Now, if you'd excuse me, I have to go play my own version of Beast games. I'm coming! Oh. Goodbye.